You ever get that feeling that something's off? Like you're watching a race, everything seems normal, one guy wins, the podium celebrations roll in, everything looks clean. But somehow, something just doesn't sit right. That was the Canadian Grand Prix in 2025. On the surface, it was all about George Russell taking a solid win for Mercedes. But underneath, behind the cameras, buried in team radio transmissions that didn't make it to the live broadcast, there was something way bigger going on. A quiet war between George Russell and Max Verstappen, a battle of minds. A psychological chess match where every move was calculated, every message had a hidden meaning, and where one misstep could have cost Max Verstappen everything. Russell took the win fair and square. No one's denying that. But new audio clips and behind-the-scenes footage released after the race tell a very different story. A story where both Russell and Verstappen were playing a silent, dangerous game. One where they weren't just racing each other, but trying to force the other into making a mistake. A mistake that, for Verstappen, could have meant missing the next race entirely. Here's why that matters. Coming into Canada, Max was already sitting on 11 penalty points on his super license. 12 points means an automatic one-race suspension. That's the rule. And with the Austrian Grand Prix right around the corner, Verstappen couldn't afford a single mistake. Red Bull knew this. And interestingly, before the race even began, they went to the FIA. They warned them. Keep an eye out, they said. Someone might try to bait Max into doing something he'll regret. And they weren't just being paranoid. The tension between Russell and Verstappen didn't start in Montreal. It started 2 weeks earlier in Barcelona. In Spain, they came together in a highly controversial moment. Verstappen shut the door hard on Russell going into turn 5, too hard. The move was aggressive, borderline reckless, and the stewards didn't let it slide. They hit Max with a 10-second time penalty and slapped 3 more penalty points on his license. That brought his total to 11. One more, and he's sitting out a race. Russell knew it. Everyone knew it. And after taking pole position in Canada, George couldn't resist poking the bear. Smiling in interviews, he said, "We're all friends. No worries. I still have a few points left to spend on my license." It got a laugh. But Red Bull didn't find it funny. Now fast forward to the race. Everything's running smoothly until late in the Grand Prix when there's a crash between Norris and Piastri, triggering the safety car. And that's when the psychological warfare begins. Around lap 68, Verstappen's on the radio complaining that the safety car is going too slowly. He says Russell's braking sharply in front of him. His engineer promises to look into it. Then, a moment later, Max briefly edges ahead of Russell, still under safety car conditions. That's not allowed. And Russell? He jumps on the radio immediately. "Verstappen just overtook me under the safety car." His engineer, Marcus Dudley, replies, "Understood, we'll check it." That's the moment things shift. From here, what should have been a routine race restart turns into a silent battle of mind games. Each driver starts pointing fingers over the radio, accusing the other of minor rule violations. Nothing huge, nothing that would scream penalty on its own, but enough to raise eyebrows. Russell, knowing the rules inside and out, begins to slow down just enough to potentially break the regulation that says you can't be more than 10 car lengths behind the safety car. Verstappen, watching him like a hawk, radios in, "He's more than 10 cars behind. Look at this!" His engineer says they're checking. Red Bull, by this point, is furious. From their perspective, this isn't just hard racing. It's targeted strategic provocation. Russell, they believe, is deliberately creating sketchy situations to try to make Max flinch, to make him react, overtake, or commit an error. And all the while, George can claim he's simply following the delta time displayed on his steering wheel. It's brilliant, and maybe dirty, but it's just within the limits of the rulebook. Russell keeps his cool. He keeps playing the game. No sudden moves. No clear breaches. Just subtle pressure. Just enough to make Max feel like he's walking a tightrope with no safety net. Lap 70, the final lap of the Canadian Grand Prix. Russell once again drifts more than 10 car lengths back from the safety car. Verstappen, clearly irritated, holds back but radios again. It's way more than 10 cars now. His engineer, Gianpiero Lambiase, tries to calm him down. "Don't take the bait, just keep your head." And that right there, that's the story of Max Verstappen's race. Holding his ground, walking a fine line, Not biting, not snapping, not retaliating, because he knew what was at stake. One wrong move, and he'd be watching Austria from the couch. As soon as the race ends, Red Bull files a formal protest with the FIA. They accuse Russell of erratic driving and unsportsmanlike behavior. They claim he was trying to bait Max into making a mistake that would result in a penalty, and possibly a suspension. Their case? If Verstappen messed up, he'd hit 12 points. He'd be out of Austria. And Russell knew that. But after reviewing all the data, the FIA rejects the protest. Their conclusion? There's no hard evidence that Russell had any malicious intent. No punishment. Case closed. Officially, anyway. Behind the scenes, the mood in the paddock is very different. Drivers, pundits, engineers, they all start asking the same question. Is this fair game? Is this part of racing? Or did Russell cross a line? Red Bull test driver Rudy Van Buren doesn't hold back. He says Russell's behavior followed a pattern: suspicious braking, irregular distances from the safety car, constantly glancing at his mirrors to see how Max would react. From Van Buren's view, it was clearly calculated, clearly designed to spark a mistake. Christian Horner, Red Bull's team boss, stands firm. He reminds everyone that the team had warned the FIA before the race. He defends Max, saying his race was clean, composed, especially given the circumstances. But the message behind the scenes is crystal clear. This wasn't coincidence. This was intentional. So here's the question no one wants to answer. Is this kind of tactical behavior smart racing, or something more sinister? Because knowing the rulebook and using it to your advantage, that's just part of the game. Every great driver does that. But using another driver's penalty points, points that could get them suspended, as a weapon? That's something new. That's dangerous. And even though Russell got off the hook, the FIA is now in the hot seat. Because this sets a precedent. If it's allowed to slide, what's to stop any driver from using another's penalty points as a strategic tool? The whole situation has sparked debate across the sport. Is it fair to weaponize the penalty system? Should the rules be updated? Should behavior like Russell's, if you believe Red Bull's version of events, even be allowed? The Canadian Grand Prix wasn't just a race. It was a warning, a shift, a glimpse into how this season might play out. A new style of warfare in Formula One, one that doesn't rely on overtakes and lap times, but on mind games, ambiguity, and pressure under the surface. And amidst all of it, Verstappen did something people didn't expect. He stayed calm. He played it smart. He didn't take the bait. And maybe that was the biggest win of all. Because let's not forget, he's still sitting on 11 penalty points. One more, and he's out for a race. And with Austria just days away, Red Bull knows they can't afford a single slip. Max knows it too. At the same time, all eyes are on the FIA. They dodged a decision this time. But next time, the pressure is rising. Because Formula One isn't just about who's fastest anymore. It's about who's sharpest. Who knows the rulebook better? Who can play the game without getting caught? And the Canadian Grand Prix might just have been the opening chapter in a whole new kind of rivalry, one that could define the 2025 season.